Traditional TV is toxic. Well, maybe not totally toxic for some, but it is definitely toxic for someone experiencing dementia. In memory care, places designed for patients with dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., there's a huge focus on physical safety, which is really important. But many people may not realize the impacts of the cognitive input on the patients in memory care. For a patient with dementia, a standard TV is a minefield of loud commercials and fast cuts. And as my guest company puts it, when someone can no longer track a plot or tell fact from fiction, a typical news broadcast even can trigger a fight or flight response that can lead to agitation and heavy sedation. So the problem is that TV is often also used as a digital babysitter, not just in dementia care, but in any care setting. I mean, anyone can attest to this, from parents to pet sitters and pet owners. So is there anything that we can do about toxic TV? This is AI-powered caregiving. I'm Ashanya Antapur from Zemply, where we are thinking deeply about how technology can support aging in place with dignity for everyone on the older adult spectrum, including those with dementia. Today, I'm joined by Bill Uniowski, CEO and co-founder of Zinnia TV. Bill's team creates research-backed video content designed specifically for people with dementia to solve this very problem of toxic TV, turning the television from a source of stress into literally a clinical tool for calm. Zinnia TV is designed for caregivers by caregivers. I'm so excited to introduce to the podcast, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And I think your introduction completely hits on, what we try to do at Zinnia. There's so many times where people are sitting in front of a TV watching something that doesn't resonate with them, that doesn't connect with them, and it isn't aligned with where they are cognitively. And that leads to a lot of problems. So that sometimes leads to people saying the TV is no good for people with dementia. But through being more intentional with what you choose through things like Zinnia, it can actually be a valuable tool.
Completely. I mean, in reference to that idea, can you walk us through a little bit of what is happening cognitively when someone with dementia or someone who's easily agitated in their older years is watching, a regular TV show, even if it's an old Western that's something of comfort to them? Is that still a risk for causing agitation and stress?
So everyone with dementia is different. And everyone's progression is different. So something that could be appropriate and work at one point might not work later. So if something comforting and familiar is working for that person, by all means, watch it. Someone in my family, it would be The Sound of Music. Watch The Sound of Music, enjoy that. It's comfortable. It's familiar. It gives good feelings. But then, there's a scene where there's, someone with a gun and people are hiding and it's, that could be difficult for someone with dementia. And here's why. So when someone is experiencing dementia, their brain is shutting down. There are parts of their brain and neurons and the pathways between them cease to work in the same way they did before. So the brain tries to compensate and find a way around it. And so if you ask someone a question, their brain's going to try to figure out how to come out with an answer, but it might take them longer. So the processing time slows, and regular media moves at a pace for people with healthy brains. It moves quickly. There's lots of dialogue and plot, maybe rapidly moving images, things that could be confusing, things that could be triggering. And for someone who's trying to process the world and processes more slowly, that could lead to confusion and agitation and frustration and make care harder, and which is the exact opposite of what the caregiver was hoping for by turning on TV.
That's really interesting. I know that you do have a little bit of a background in digital media and digital strategy. Do you know any of the reasons why TV is designed, traditional TV, let's call it that, is designed to be sort of fast moving and fast paced like that?
Well, it's all about the audience, right? And they want to engage the audience and keep them excited and keep them coming back. And, that media serves people who are healthy well. You can pick what you like. There's lots of options. And that's what we try to do with Zinnia, but for people with dementia. We have a broad catalog of lots of different topics because in the same way you want to pick something that matches your interests, your background, things you like, we should offer that to people with dementia as well.
Can you walk us through a little bit about what the Zinnia TV programs or videos look like? How do they differ from traditional television?
Sure. So a typical Zinnia video will be highly visual, with some sound effects to be multisensory and catch people's attention. We will stay on the frame, say it's a baby's video. So we'll stay on the frame of that baby longer than you or I want to stare at it. But for someone who
Mm.
processes the world more slowly, it allows them to engage with and digest what it is they're seeing and understand it. We will keep that person in focus. There will not be a lot of other things going on at the screen at a time. The transitions are smooth. We'll have music in the background that matches the topic. So it might be calming, it might be exciting, depending on what we're watching. And most of our videos don't have language, which means that people don't have to
Mm.
worry about following what people are saying, what the video is saying, doesn't lead to confusion. And it also allows people of all language backgrounds to enjoy it. And despite the fact that there's no language on many of our videos, we're still telling a story. We're visually telling a story. There's an arc to it. So the baby's first year video will start with the baby in the hospital, the baby with their mom. He's wrapped in a towel, and then it'll move on to baby getting dressed and changing a diaper and all sorts of different things that are just really engaging and helps to bring back fond feelings for people who went through parenthood.
It sounds like it's really well designed. It's super interesting that there isn't a lot of audio or spoken audio to it that you mentioned. Do you find that people with dementia are having trouble processing things like dialogue or, yeah, complex audio interactions?
Yes, absolutely. So as dementia progresses, some people sometimes tend to lose words. So if I give you a sentence of 5 words, you might miss one. And then there's another sentence, another sentence. And as these lost words add up, the person is trying to figure out what's going on. And it can cause confusion and stress, which makes it harder to follow.
I see. This kind of leads me to my next question, which is like Zinnia is designed by caregivers for caregivers, which I think makes it a wonderful product. I'm curious, what do you think caregivers taught you or taught the content creators or the technologists that they may not have immediately grasped about dementia environments?
Sure. So my entire experience with Zinnia and that of our team has been an exercise in ongoing dementia education. And it's because our other co-founder, Allison Schreier, was a family caregiver to her husband who had frontotemporal dementia and diagnosed at a very young age. So she went through the entire journey as a family caregiver and understood what the stresses were, what she was looking for help with, some of the other things. On top of that, Allison went on to pivot her career into dementia education and support. So she's constantly doing support groups. We do webinars for people talking about education. She worked for the state of Washington, teaching courses in long-term care communities about dementia and mental health. And then she also worked at the University of Washington's Memory and Brain Wellness Center, managing an education program for primary care physicians in rural and underserved areas that don't see a lot of dementia. So we have this basis through her eyes as the team creates Zinnia. And then on top of that, though, we've also engaged in research. So we spent 2 years testing our content with families in long-term care communities and in hospitals with the University of British Columbia and Vancouver General Hospital. And it resulted in 7 published papers talking about why Zinnia works and why this type of slow media is beneficial and how it works for people living with dementia. So lots of basis behind this, but it starts with a true understanding of what a family caregiver goes through every day.
Yes, I've had the chance to read a bit about Allison and listen to her story. And I think it's so important for listeners to hear that dementia isn't I mean, we always think about it something that happens much later in life. But in terms of Allison's case, I think her husband was struck with it in like his late to mid 40s. And so that can really, turn your life around. And so it's really great that there are tools now coming out that she took her experiences and wanted to create something.
Absolutely. The experience that she had that sort of was the light bulb moment for Zinnia was when Evan could no longer live at home, he was living in a community. She went to visit him and his wheelchair was pushed up against a TV, watching something that he never would have chosen to watch. The caregivers put on, soap operas in Spanish, because that's what they wanted to watch. And it didn't resonate with him. It didn't connect with him, his background, his interests. He couldn't understand it. He couldn't verbalize that he couldn't understand it. And it led to a lot of agitation.
Mm.
And she, saw that and said, I have to do something better. And it started with just photos of their kids and their dogs and their travel on an iPhone, and with music in the background, nice and slow. And she realized that this worked. And so we looked into some of the research around media and people with dementia and processing. And we just started creating these videos and testing them with members of her support group and communities where she was teaching. And that's just how it began.
Wow, what an amazing story. I'm really curious. So you do mention Zinnia being part of the slow media movement. And I'm really, really interested in the idea because not only do you see types of this within the older adult and aging services use case, but I think that there's a lot that stands to be gained for people from something like this, from evangelizing slow media. For example, I don't know if you're aware, but in kids media, this is a trend that's also happening where we're talking about slow stim media, which is like traditional TV shows, kids TV shows even, are designed to like capture their attention, keep them engaged, and like almost create that adrenaline spike in them, right? And parents are kind of realizing, hey, I don't necessarily want my child to be going through that every time they watch a 25-minute show. So there is like a trend now called slow stim, which is like, calmer videos, nothing really too agitating. And we're seeing that in the kids market. So it's really fun and interesting to see that in this older adult market as well. And I think it fits perfectly there because, the TV as a digital caregiver is, in those use cases, really, that's where it comes into play. Do you
Absolutely.
see,
We're
go
all
ahead.
susceptible to fast moving media. We're watching, reels and shorts, and it's all quick, and it's about the hook, and it's about keeping you and then moving you to the next thing. We hear from our caregivers all the time that they enjoy watching Zinnia because it calms them down. And when we think about caregivers using Zinnia with someone living with dementia, there's multiple ways to use it and multiple benefits. So sometimes caregivers like to use it for respite. They can turn it on. They know their loved one enjoys watching what they're seeing. They know there's not going to be any commercials or any triggering topics or what YouTube is going to play next. And they can step away for 10 minutes and take a shower, just take a deep breath, do something they need to do. But we also talk about the respite angle, but respite with that loved one. You can
Yeah.
sit together, watch something that you both enjoy, a topic, a place that you went on vacation, and use that as a jumping off point for conversation. The most powerful button in Zinnia isn't the play button, it's the pause button, because that's when watching it together, you can watch something for a little while and stop it and talk about it and ask questions and use it as a jumping off point for reminiscence or conversations to allow you to connect. And that's what this is all about. It's more than, a digital babysitter, turn it on. It's really an effective tool at creating engagement and conversation and connection and moments of joy, as well as helping people to, redirect agitation or help with activities in daily living and things like that.
Yeah, Zinnia does have this awesome like set of videos that talks about things like drinking water or other small instructions for patients to help them with their activities of daily living. I think that's really unique. You're not just like providing content to engage and distract, you're providing content to like slowly help someone learn or remember how to do something simple like drink water or get dressed or, get up in the morning.
Yes, those videos that came out of the research we did in Canada. Someone asked us, "Do you think you can create something that could help my mom drink water, or help people be more open to taking a shower?" So people with dementia are oftentimes resistant to certain things, certain care tasks that happen every day. And so, is there a way that we can model, prompt, or cue those behaviors to put someone in a more receptive mindset to do that thing? And so we started making these videos, we tested them, and we found that not only were they effective, but even more so when used as part of a routine. Routine is really important
Mm.
in dementia care. People are used to what they do and they like that and they're comfortable. So we have communities and caregivers at home who every day at 11:30, they pour glasses of water and they watch the Let's Drink Water video and they see people drinking water and dogs drinking water, and they see the cup filled, and they hear the water pouring in, and it encourages people to drink. And drinking, water is very important for people with dementia, because there's a higher incidence of UTIs if people are dehydrated and other things like that. So that's just an example. We're just showing people doing the thing and enjoying it.
Yeah, and I love that you guys target sort of, there's the visual aspect, there's the auditory aspect. So you're really sending those signals to the dementia patient at the end of the day. That sounds really effective. I want to transition a bit to asking about, like, CMS has been tightening the use of antipsychotic medications and asking operators to reduce, the amounts that they're using in terms of um, giving people antipsychotics when they're agitated, using chemicals in those moments. Do you see something like Zinnia functioning to help aid that measure?
Yeah, absolutely. Zinnia is a great non-pharmacological intervention for dementia, for agitation. We don't have specific data around that as part of our research. We have anecdotal data of it being observed. One example is we were at a conference and someone came to us and said, we have a resident in our community. She regularly gets agitated. Her care plan calls for her to be given a dose of her antipsychotic. And we realize this is happening too often. We want to try to find alternatives to that. And someone on the floor who worked with her knew that she was a pediatric nurse in her past. So we decided, let's show her a Zinnia Babies video the next time she's agitated and see what happens. And so they pulled up a tablet, they put it in front of her, they watched the baby's video, and within 2 to 3 minutes, she had noticeably calmed down. She was reaching out at the screen, she was cooing at the babies, and they changed her care plan so that when she gets agitated, they show her Zinnia as opposed to giving her the medication, which is great. It's a big win. Equally,
Yeah.
during our research with Vancouver General Hospital, there was a gentleman who was admitted to the hospital for another condition, but he had dementia and was quite destructive. He pulled the TV off a wall and things like that. So they were looking for alternatives and ways to calm him. They knew he loved cars. They mounted a projector on the ceiling of a hospital room. And when he'd get agitated, they'd bring him to the room and they'd turn on the Cars video, and it would be on the wall full size. And suddenly he'd see that and he'd hear some music and he'd start pointing to the things in the car and start talking. And it gave, the hospital staff a lot of comfort, and reduced stress, because they knew that there was a way that his agitation could be managed, but also it made his family really happy because they were able to see that he was no longer as frustrated. So yes, big push behind the reduction of antipsychotics, and I think there's a multitude of ways of doing it. But really, it's connecting with that person and figuring out what lights them up and what changes their perspective.
Yeah, I think that's like a huge benefit of this. I mean, allowing people not just to be prescribed antipsychotics every time they go into an agitated state, but really trying to address, calming down their brain, which I think is totally doable. I'm a big believer in things like meditation. So this is really in line with what we're hearing in like the wellness community, and even like wellness and brain studies and like longevity health. But yeah, I think Zinnia's videos, I've had the chance to watch some of them, are really calming for anybody, not just someone with dementia, but really for anyone.
Yes,
Um,
and we're often asked, is this for mid to late stage dementia when you can't watch the things that you normally like? And yes, it works for that. But we hear from people who have mild cognitive impairment. They're at the very early stages, and they choose to get Zinnia and to use it periodically when they feel themselves needing a break and needing to calm down. They'll just go, they'll turn something on, they'll watch something they like, it'll calm them down, and then they can go back to their day.
Not to mention, some of the benefits are like the ad free that you mentioned. I'm sure many people would be interested in ad free media.
Yeah. So, YouTube is there and a lot of people have it and watch it because they can find whatever they want. And it's often used both at home and within a care setting, but you can't control what commercials are on there. And you also
Yeah.
can't control the next video that plays. And I've heard stories from communities where they've been watching something that's been really good, and then a commercial pops on and it just triggers people and takes away all the benefits that they had just created by watching something calming. So yeah, Zinnia is a dementia friendly platform where everything you watch is going to be, made with the same intentionality around dementia to ensure that it's appropriate for that audience.
Yeah, I want to transition a little bit into just kind of your story and your background because it's fascinating. From your CV, you've had a really long career and you've gone from sort of like investment and risk management to pivoting to like digital media strategy. Is there anything you could say on that in that transition in your life?
Well, I think a lot of people who come to work in this space have a personal connection to it. Obviously, my co-founder Allison has a very deep personal connection. I had a couple of grandparents who had experienced dementia, and I was kind of in my young adult years and living in other places, and so I didn't see it firsthand closely, except for visits or phone calls when I'd check in. But I heard from my parents and my aunts and uncles about how difficult it was, and it was hard to hear. And so it was something that always was sort of in the back of my mind. And, as I moved from, different career opportunities, I always wanted to do something meaningful. And so I moved from something big to something small. And I like being in a small type of startup environment because you get to do a lot of things and you see the impact that you make. And then moving to this, which is really an impactful startup in a small company, it's been fantastic. I speak to people all the time. I hear the feedback of the impact that Zinnia has on people and families. We get emails thanking us. Even when people cancel our subscriptions, it's often because the loved one that they were caring for passes away. And
Mm,
so they talk about how great it was to have and how useful and helpful and how they spread the word. And so it's just a really meaningful thing. And I think um, there's
yeah.
just a lot of good that people are capable of doing a lot of interesting things in life. And it's great to choose something beneficial for others.
Completely. The path to social entrepreneurship is not a straight line. And I think everyone can afford to tap into that sort of generosity of spirit and still be working to achieve success, but success with impact. And that's definitely what we believe here at Zemply as well. A lot of us have personal stories as well to why we're involved in older care and aging services. And I think, your point about not being directly involved with your grandparents' care, but still still feeling the after effects is so true for so many of us. I kind of have this idea that every single person who exists is a caregiver in some way or the other. Like you are touched by having to deliver care to somebody or something, like a pet, even. And so, yeah, it's personal for everyone, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And one of the things that I hear often, I was just at a conference full of volunteers who work with people with dementia, and they love it. It's the highlight of their week when they get to go to this respite community and spend hours with someone with dementia.
Mm,
It's a side that probably people don't think about experiencing until they're thrust in it, but many people find it really meaningful in order to connect and help another person.
yeah, definitely. Um, so you mentioned that you're not a full-time caregiver or anything yourself, um, but that you did feel some after effects from your grandparents. What about your current state? Or can you share? Are you in a caregiving capacity at all, or prepping to be in one?
I'm not currently in a caregiving capacity, but everybody's got parents who are getting older. The reality is, I think the difference is I see what other people have gone through and what what is to potentially come. And so I guess it puts me in a more thoughtful mindset about what the future could hold and the reality of it. I think for people who aren't exposed to this, uh, it's quite a shock sometimes when something happens, and there's a lot of processing that's involved, and there's a lot of searching for resources. There's so many things out there, but when someone's in it, it's hard to find. It's hard to find the right thing. And I talk to people too who are in the medical field, and they say, I should know how to navigate this. This is my job. I do this all the time. But now when it's personal, it's different because there's that emotional aspect to it. There's the family dynamic of other people who's going to take on more caregiving or less caregiving. There's the financial aspect. It's a really heavy thing to encounter. So, it's really important to provide tools and strategies and support wherever possible.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's partly why we have AI-powered caregiving. This podcast, we are trying to open up the conversations and the stories between what's available and the tools, and then real life stories from different caregivers. I have two rapid fire questions for you because I think it's always great to get to know you as a person a little bit too. But what is there a book that you're currently reading or a book that you can recommend?
Oh, I should have prepped for this one. um, I just I really like books by Eric Larson. He writes these historical nonfiction books, but he tells the story like it's fiction. It's very captivating. So there are books around events around World War II. There's a great Churchill book. There's a great book about Germany in the 30s. There's a book about storm in Galveston, Texas. This is huge hurricane,
Hmm.
beginning of the the age of weather forecasting. There's all sorts of so they're all. I really like those. I like some inspirational books as well. I read Meditations by Marcus
Hmm.
Aurelius on a trip recently, and it was a real kind of active book. And it's wild to think that this person 2,000 years ago was
Yeah,
writing to himself, never intending for it to be published. And it's like sometimes I read that, I'm like, that's how I talk to myself in my head sometimes. And both that book specifically, but also the other books that are historic, it sort of connects you to people and humanity in a larger scale. That's why I like.
definitely. We have our modern day Marcus Aurelius here with the Eric Larson. I think are they the person that wrote The Devil in the White City?
Yes, and
Potentially.
that was the first
Yes.
one I read because I live near Chicago, and so it all takes place in Chicago, and that's what got me hooked.
Yeah, that's a great book. I will second that recommendation. Devil in the White City, fascinating and creepy. And lots about Chicago and the World's Fair that was going on. So yeah, I loved that one as well. And I know you're busy. You're a CEO, of course, but is there anything that you're currently watching, or a TV show or a movie that you would recommend to people?
I don't watch a lot of TV. That's funny. I work in the I know people with dementia, but I don't watch a lot of TV. I consume a lot of podcasts, a lot of sort of like tech news or sort of inspirational kind of self improvement stuff, like health and longevity. I listen to Huberman Lab, lots of stuff like he talks about the brain. So there's a crossover, I think, of personal interest in health and also brain health that I never probably would have been so interested in brain health before I started working in dementia. But I
Yeah,
think
and
one.
once you get into brain health, it's a wonderful world. So excited also for the future. I feel like more and more research is coming out, and we're going to get further and further along with it. So I'm with you.
Yes. And there's, all the studies that we know so much about the body, we know so little about the brain.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so,
Well, podcast it is then. Yeah, podcasts are great too. We love them here at this podcast. So
yeah,
thank
okay.
you
Well,
so.
so not to completely, back out of the question, I guess, um, I'm a sucker for a Jason Bourne movie. Anytime I'm flipping channels and I see that's on, it catches me and I sit there and I stick with it. It takes you around the world. It's a little bit of action, suspense, things like that.
All right, so Jason Bourne and then the Huberman Labs.
Yes, that's the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. We really enjoyed having you, and thank you for enlightening us about Zinnia. It's like a wonderful, wonderful product, and we're so excited to see what happens in the future with Zinnia TV.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Zinnia. I always love to do it, and I appreciate all your fandom. You clearly looked at this and enjoy it and understand it deeply. So made for a good conversation. So thank you very much.
Of course, yeah, I'll be signing up myself. I think it's great. It's calming, and who doesn't need a little more calm in their lives these days?
Exactly.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thanks.